That's it. Time being 7:05 p.m., I'll call the Selectmen's meeting to order this evening. We do have a full house. First item on the agenda is the request for an automatic amusement license for P&D Pizza. I know that Ted is present this evening. Good evening. If you want to come forward, I'm going to read the public hearing notice into the record, and then I would consider any motions by my colleagues. I'm going to mispronounce your name,
That's
so I'm going
okay.
to apologize in
That's all right.
advance, okay? Soterios Estefuzio,
Close.
close enough, he says, of P&D Pizza, also known as Ted, which is located at 440 Main Street, Oxford, Mass., has applied to the Oxford Board of Selectmen for up to 4 automatic amusement device licenses to be exercised at 440 Main Street. Public hearing will be held before the Oxford Board of Selectmen regarding this matter on Tuesday, January 24th, 2012, at 7 p.m. in the Selectmen's Meeting Room on the second floor of the Oxford Town Hall, 325 Main Street, Oxford, Massachusetts. Written and oral comments from the public will be accepted at this hearing. Pretty straightforward on our end. I'd entertain any motions. Selectman Lamountain?
Madam Chair, I make a motion, we approve the 4.
Okay.
I'll second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? This is a public hearing. Seeing none, no hands, call for the vote?
Yes.
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 Yes. 5 in the affirmative, that is allowed.
Thank you.
Thanks for
Good luck.
coming in.
Thank you. How are you?
Next item on the agenda, we have Mr. Kravosky here, who has a Wellington Brook sign request. Good evening.
Good evening, Madam Chairman and Board, Commission. Thank you, Commission. Briefly, I sent you all Karen packages of information that had gone off to USGS, both in Montana and Mississippi, Wisconsin, relative to Wellington Brook being misnamed in 1983 when they revised the USGS maps from the American Standard to metric. And they put the Wellington Brook up to Chimney Pond, the tributary, which was always an unnamed tributary to Wellington Brook. And Wellington, a historical figure in Oxford, Charles Wellington, Wellington Memorial Auditorium. The Wellington Farmhouse is still standing on Old Worcester Road. Wellington built Old Worcester Road, left money. There's still a trust in Oxford with about $15,000 in it, the Wellington Trust, for the maintenance of that road system, although the town doesn't use it. Because we only have 3 brooks in Oxford that are named after people, Wellington, Lowe's, and Barbers, and I grew up in Wellington Valley, so I'm very familiar with the workings of the original dairy farm, 1835 to 1935. I was both wanting to correct the naming so that the Wellington Brook is the brook that's next to Wellington Road and not up the unnamed tributary, which is Chimney Pond, which if you see some of the package I sent to you, you'll see that the name Brook goes to Chimney on the new ones. And the old historic maps, it goes up to the Wellington Farmhouse in that Wellington Valley. USGS agreed that they had erred and they're going to fix them, their USGS maps at the next round of revisions. And in the same light, I had brought to the commission, the board, Selectmen, in the past that I was going to be working to get rid of the Trip Hammer Brook sign on Route 12, which was an error. That sign, the word Trip Hammer Mills on that property in the Brook system, but the brook, there's no evidence that it was ever called Trip Hammer Brook. I have run this by Alice and James Walker, who I believe it was Alice Walker who had asked when she was a selectwoman to put the sign up there because of the mills in the back, and they might have nicknamed it Trip Hammer Brook, but in all records it's called Wellington Brook. So lastly, I was the person that went and got the French River, Batty Brook, Lowe's Brook, Barber's Hollow, named through the selectmen who sent the letters to Mass Highway at the time, now Mass DOT, asked for the naming. I'm asking again for this one brook, which I didn't have any involvement in. Would the selectmen send a letter to Mass DOT and properly name it Wellington Brook, both north and southbound, so we can honor this Mr. Wellington, who again is one of the historical figures in town. Maybe not as big, lastly, as Clara Barton and Mr. Jocelyn, but still a person that had prominence in town, was a dam builder and engineer, a gentleman farmer, had a big dairy farm, and his dairy farm supplied dairy products to the city of Worcester.
Thank you. Thank you. Selectman Lamountain.
Hey, Glenn, so the Trip Hammer signs on Route 12 would come down?
Yes, they would.
Be replaced with Wellington?
Wellington, and if I may,
Yep.
there were 2 Trip Hammer signs, one north and south, but when they put the sewer line to the Oxford High School. They took one down, the one on the, going towards south, and because it was an error, I never pushed to put that sign back up. And just knew that over a period of time, whenever I got a time to do this, I would eventually be in front of you.
So this would just be replacing signs that exist with proper names?
Yes, sir.
No additional signs?
No additional signs.
Madam Chair, if I could, I'd make a motion that we write a letter on behalf, as requested by Mr. Gavoski, to change those signs.
Okay, I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Discussion? Just want to say thank you for your research and work on this.
Thank you.
Call for the vote.
Yes.
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 Yes, 5 in the affirmative. We will make that request to Mass DOT for the 2 Wellington Brook signs, one for northbound lane and southbound lane on Route 12.
Thank you again.
Thank you.
You
Thanks
have a
for
good
coming
day.
in.
Appreciate
You
it.
too.
Thank you again, Selectman.
Okay, we have a continued public hearing regarding our selection of a residential tax factor. We have our town assessor. Good evening, Mr. Pepka. How are you?
Good, and you, Madam Chair.
Let's see here. Looks like I will read the notice into the record again, just because this is a continued public hearing with respect to the tax factor. Please take notice that the Oxford Board of Selectmen will hold a public hearing on Tuesday, January 24th, 2012, at 7:10 p.m. This hearing has been continued from the Selectmen's meeting, which was held on January 10th, 2012. It will be held in the Selectmen's meeting room on the second floor of the Town Hall, which is located at 325 Main Street, Oxford, Massachusetts, on the matter of selecting a residential factor which will determine the percentages of tax to be borne by each class of property for fiscal year 2012. Written and oral comments from the public will be accepted at this hearing. So what do you have for us this evening?
We're still in the approval process. We've been working with the state diligently. The best I can report is at this point, nothing has changed. We're dealing with a lot of invalid.
You're on. Okay. Time being 7:05 p.m., I'll call the Selectmen's meeting to order. We do have a busy agenda this evening. We're going to try to stick to it. First item on the agenda, we have our annual 2013 budget presentation. It's going to be presented by our Finance Director, Ms. Folio, and we have Finance Committee members in attendance. Thank you for coming out this evening. And before we get into all of that, I'm going to yield to the town manager to give his annual budget message at this time. Before we get to that, thank you, Mr. Manager. We did have a death in the community over the last week. Howard Peterson, who had served as an election worker in town since the 1960s, passed away, and he was also very, very active in the Boy Scouts. So before we get to the manager's budget message, I'd like to ask everybody to join me in a moment of silence to remember Mr. Peterson. Thank you. Manager.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Town Manager's budget message for fiscal year 2013. Folks need to know that by charter, I'm required to give a budget message 90 days before town meeting. Town meeting is scheduled for the first week in May, so this is the 91st day before that meeting. I've often used my annual budget message to comment on the impact the variations in state aid have had on the operation of our local government. Usually the comments had to do with state aid increases that were less than was needed to maintain what we call level service in the programs we are required to provide and the functions we are required to perform. This year, the governor has proposed a budget that will increase state funding for education and level fund general government aid, what was once called lottery distribution or lottery aid, but is now considered unrestricted general government aid, or UGGA, and sometimes UGA. So we'll have a net increase. That's nice. The problem is that the Department of Education has determined that Oxford must increase its contribution to education by over 4%, well in excess of the 2.5% increase in local revenues allowed by so-called Proposition 2.5. Since 2009, I've annually reported that we are facing the bad times. You'll remember that in about this time in 2009, we had a cutback in state aid that was then in effect, a 9C cut, they call it. I've reported that the leading indicators suggest we are not out of this recession, and they do not bode well for new growth and local receipts such as building permits and auto excise tax. Let's face it, very few new homes being built, new factories being built, and people are less and less likely to buy new cars. So all those receipts are down. And despite this sense of gloom, I thought that we might start the recovery of lost general government staff this year, 2013 coming up. But such a large increase in contribution to education will make that impossible. As of the date of this message, fully 90 days before our budget-setting annual town meeting, the governor's proposal and the DOE's calculation is all we have. And I mean that literally. We have yet to receive the regional school assessment, our insurance premium increases we don't know about yet, let alone our local school budget request. I've contacted our State House delegation and expressed my concern. They tell me that the governor's proposed budget is maybe a bit more generous than what might actually result. I've also asked our school superintendent to determine why our required minimum contribution is increasing so much. I don't have answers yet, so what is presented tonight by Mrs. Folio, is one possible outcome based on the information currently available, and this might all change when we finally meet to vote a budget for fiscal year 2013. It's interesting to note how the distribution of spending has changed over the years. Comparing fiscal 2008, that's the year before we had the 9C cuts and the precipitous drop in state aid. By comparing fiscal 2008 budgets to the currently proposed, what you'll hear tonight, fiscal year 2013 budgets, the following results. General government, which is everything in the town hall plus the facilities maintenance department, the people who maintain our buildings, has increased by $60,695. Public safety, fire, police, dispatching has increased by $288,151. Public Works has increased by only $14,906. Human Services, primarily Council on Aging, and Veterans, has increased by $35,649, and that primarily because veterans' benefits have increased. Culture and Recreation, Library, Historic Commission, that's decreased by $45,157. Debt service has decreased. That's a good thing. We're paying down our debt. Employee benefits has increased by slightly over $1 million, $1,006,251. Probably I'm led in large part because most of those benefits are in health insurance. And total public education, which is all our educational costs, has increased by $1,511,000. The total net increase in local appropriations is $2,836,570. Over the years, I reported that department budget requests have exceeded revenues, and this year is no exception. This year, department requests exceed the currently estimated $32,439,830 available for appropriation by $5,534,863. And keep in mind that the town has yet to receive the public education request from either Bay Path or our local schools. There's nothing new there. We expect our department heads to request what they determine is needed to operate their departments. What is new is the increase in net minimum contribution. Since fiscal year 2008, the public education budget has increased by $1,511,000. I just mentioned that number. an amount that represents 53% of the total increase in appropriations between 2008 and 2013. In addition, in fiscal 2011, we began appropriating not only the minimum amount required by the state for schools funding, but added to that the UGGA, the Unrestricted General Government Aid, formerly Lottery Aid, that's provided by the state. In fiscal 2011, that amount was more than $1.7 million. In fiscal 12, that amount was slightly more than $1.6 million. And for fiscal 2013, the governor is currently proposing the same amount, the $1.6 million. In conclusion, I want to express my sincere appreciation to all our town officials, boards, committees, commissions, employees, and residents for their cooperation, understanding, and help in building a financially sound municipal government. And I ask for your continued support and courage as we face these extremely difficult financial times. This is respectfully submitted on the 7th day of February, 2012. Joseph M. Zaneski, Town Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. And now to turn it over to the Finance Director. I know that you have, as you normally do, you've given us some highlights that we should focus on in a handout, and I know that the budget, you're gonna preface and tell us that these are moving numbers, and that might even be a little overstated, but.
Just to give you some highlights, I'm going to start with the revenue budget. The tax base, the tax levy is increased based on last year's projected new growth. And when I say last year, FY 2012, and our Prop 2.5 that we got in 2012, that increased it by $577,046. This year, an additional increase for the Prop 2.5 increase, that increases because it's 2.5% of the levy. I'm projecting $432,390. That number may change a little because I still don't have an FY12 new growth figure yet. New growth, I'm estimating at $150,000. The debt exclusion is $450,551. The cherry sheet, Chapter 70, Education Aid, is at $10,160,549. That's an increase of $396,396. Charter tuition reimbursement is at $63,825. That was a decrease of $1,524. Unrestricted general government aid, what used to be called lottery, has stayed the same at $1,613,477. The other non-offset state aid is $170,671, an increase of $34,611. That's, I believe, primary veterans reimbursements because we're getting 75% reimbursed for the claims. They're about a year in arrears on paying those claims. But you'll also notate that we're having an increase in that expenditure appropriation for veterans benefits as well. Other offset state aid, $90,570. That's an increase of $26,983. The MSBA reimbursement of $1,053,083. That has not changed. Local estimated receipts still projecting the same as 2012, 2017, 270. The bulk of that is motor vehicle excise, so we're just getting the first commitment out, so I'm not sure what the collection rate will be on that. Overlay, I try to keep it about 200,000. I did have to lower that in 2012. Once we don't have a tax rate yet, so that's still a number that's in the column of 2012. That's not even solid yet. We don't have any deficits. We don't usually know about deficits until the year end. The educational library offsets, which you can see the number was from other offset state aid, 90,570. State and county charges went up $7,024 to $70,728. School choice sending tuition has increased to $197,479. It's an increase of $21,533. Charter school sending tuition, $399,370. That's an increase of $24,497. The amount available for operations have increased $913,286. The school operational budget, as Joe alluded to, the net minimum contribution is $8,878,897. It's a $343,788 increase. It's a little bit more than 4%. That to me is it's a very complicated formula. We've met today and spoke about it a little bit with the school. There's also municipal revenue growth factor that's playing a role in this as well. Interesting enough, when I went on the state site to get the detail, they don't have 2012 or 2013 available. And I've asked for the information, they're working on it, but they seem to come up with a number that is increased a percent between 12 and 13. It's now at almost 3.5%. We're still locked in at 2.5%. Something doesn't seem right. Between a 4%, 3.5%, we're the only ones locked in at the 2.5%. And that's a problem if we can only increase at 2.5% and everybody else is doing a lot more, and it's impacting us. Charter tuition reimbursement is at $63,825. That's a decrease of $1,524. Less the apportioned indirect cost, $5,750,599, and it says decrease, but it's their indirect cost have increased by $100,585, and that number may change too because a bulk of that is their health insurance. We don't have those numbers yet. We've been giving them the entire amount of the UGGA, $1,613,477. That would give them a school operating budget of $14,966,149, an increase of $634,642. I'm going to just tell you that the number here for school transportation is printed. I'm not going to announce it because we're got a contract bid out, and I don't want that to become the new bid price. School community service is $25,000, no change. Medicaid billing, $7,500, that's no change. Bay Path, they do not have the assessment yet, so that's still at the 2012 numbers. So the total expending for school operational budgets, including all types of school, including Bay Path and transportation, has increased about $741,701, which means the amount available for non-school operations, $15,184,110, increase of $171,585. In going through the budget, there are a number of things that have changed. I don't know if I can give percentages out, but I've tried to cover for all the contract changes that are going on and that we're projecting. This percentage would also apply to the personnel board employees and contracted employees, meaning like the town manager and the police chief. There were a few reclassifications that have been made by the personnel board that are still being held for an implementation date of July 1st, because we no longer have a salary adjustment account in the personnel board. We had for many years had it there so that if somebody got a reclassification, the differential could be paid from that salary adjustment account. We don't have that ability, and with the budget so tight, if the personnel board decides that someone should be on a different level, that can't go into effect until July 1st. It's very hard to accommodate it. There are, what I tried to do to start with is go back to the 2012 voted column, bottom dollar, and I put that as the bottom dollar for each department to start with. Then I factored in the cost, the COLA that was in all the employment contracts, and then I had to go back and put in the things that I knew were increasing. I have Fallon at 5%. I don't have the Tufts factored in here yet. There's been a change in the retirement assessment. I'm not opposed to the change. I think it's what should have been done from the beginning, but what they used to do up until this year was to make your assessment determination based on your current salary. So they take all the employees that are paying in, and that's how they would determine how much that percentage from what Oxford pays in for salary to the total became your percentage of what the assessment, total assessment they needed. They have now gone in and had an actuarial study for each member town. But there's an increase, a significant increase in the share of the assessment. We've been not paying as much as we should have, based on the actuarial study, but they're doing a 3-year phase into that change. So by 2015, we'll be at our full actuarial study of what we're supposed to be paying. That change will have taken place. So a third, a third, and a third is how they're going to do it. That increased us by about a little over 100,000. However, keep in mind that that number is going to keep going up because by 2030 or 2028, they have to be fully funded. They don't have a choice. It's not an option with the retirement. Then I went through and I tried to change some things where I knew where electric was short or things that had issues in the budget. Then I had to go through and make everything else work, and it wasn't pretty. It was, I did talk to a lot of the departments. It's very upsetting for them to be faced with either layoffs or cuts in hours again. I would recommend that the town hall be closed to only be open 4 days a week and open one evening to kind of consolidate the amount of time that people are coming in, to try to give them the chance to either find work on Friday, Saturday, Sunday, or maybe they can save a daycare cost or a commuting cost or something to try to help them out to take another hit. It's comes out to around a 6.5% decrease for the general government employees. In different departments, there's elimination of, in the police department, there was elimination of a position, but it's not filled. So we had we're working with every department to try to get some feedback of where they think they can maneuver the numbers in between, but right now I have to keep the bottom number about where it is, which is a 2012 level funded, certainly not level service. And that may get worse as the bigger numbers come through. So once again, I'm the bearer of bad news.
I'd like to reiterate, however, this is one possible outcome with the information we currently have available. If we've heard from one of our State House delegation that the governor's proposal was more generous than might more likely result. And if that's the case, then that'll probably hit UGGA.
Good. Could.
It could. Because we're not out of this yet. It's still not good times yet. And
I think that your last meeting, the school committee chairman was here, and I totally agree with the comment that she said about the formula being flawed, and there's something very wrong when the cities and towns are being made to try to fund a school, and even this amount is not the appropriate amount for the school system to be functioning at. But it puts the burden completely on the property owners to pay for it. And that's not how this should be structured.
Thank you. Board members, questions, comments? Selectman Marsh?
Well, Donna, thank you for this report, I guess. With that fall formula you're talking about, it's also the town hall employees are really taking a big hit for this. I mean,
Yeah.
they have been the ones that have been cut back and cut back and cut back. If we were to close, so we'd probably have very few full-time employees in this building then, is that correct?
That's correct. Well, full-time, if you're defining it at 40 hours,
Hours.
you'd have a new full-time. The full-time would probably be more like a 32 to a 35, depending on who it was. Could be as much, little as 28.
Now, would all departments in the town hall, if we did go with an extended day, would they all be opened for that extended period, or just?
That's what I would recommend. I don't know how the town manager feels about it, but where the selectman's clerk has to already work an evening, I wouldn't suggest that office be open, extended, because my suggestion would be go back to Tuesdays, the Tuesday evening hours. That's the way it was. That would give people an option if they wanted to come in. If you look around to a lot of the surrounding towns, most of them are now closing primarily Friday, and they're opening one day, typically the day that their selectmen are meeting. And some of them are opening a little bit earlier to try to squeeze it all into one. It's difficult. It's been 2009 was the last COLA given out. We had steps frozen. There were no steps frozen in this. But during 2009, that was when we did the 9C cuts, so whatever COLA they had disappeared. That's why when you hear the town manager, he's referencing 2008, because that was the actual last year that there was no decrease with a 9C cut or anything. It was that's our gold standard, I guess, if we compare everything to. It's been downhill since then.
The other question I had is that you've mentioned that town hall employees would withstand a loss of hours again in your little notes here. Is that, even if we do go to a 4-day week, would we still have certain employees that would get like a double whammy? They'd not only lose
Well,
a day, they may lose
I'm
other
trying not to
hours
make it,
also.
I'm trying not to make it a full day. So when I say close, and only be open to the public 4, is to consolidate it more and more so that they could get supplemental employment if they could, or save on something. My projections is approximately 2.5 to 3 hours off of everybody that's in the town hall
Wow.
every week.
I know it's just the state we're in, but you go through this town hall now, and the employees are stressed to the max as it is. They're doing work, you've even mentioned about jumping around still some more in various departments that we do now. And as I sit here, it just eats at my stomach to think that we're gonna do this more to
Gonna
these
do
people.
it again, and we have a
Oh.
presidential election coming up, so that means even more workload.
It's just not right, and I said it when our Representative Fatman was here, that, I don't think we get enough money from the state, from the lottery, the great lottery that, and boy, lottery sales, you read the paper, they're supposed to be increasing, and, that money isn't coming back to, it fries me. And then they're talking about casinos, which that money will go to some fat person somewhere in their wallet, meaning that in
Exactly.
their wallet, not to us in the town, and it just fries me. I mean, how can we run a town properly? I don't know.
There's
Thank
not
you.
a department that's not severely affected
Mhm.
in going through this. And they're still a little bit in shell shock. One of the problems that inherent problems I have is this information didn't come out till about 4 o'clock on the 25th of January.
Wow.
which doesn't give me a lot of time to get a budget put together that's balanced to get out to you, which I got out on Friday, in the middle of having an audit and training and things that were going on. It was a horrendous week last week, and try to get two departments on Friday, at least let them know what was being handed out. They have not, some of them have made initial comments, but most of them want some time to think about where they could restructure or do things differently. But most of the people I talked to were like, okay, I'm so close to the edge, I really need to be able to save something, whether it's a commuting, a daycare, or maybe I can get some extra hours working somewhere else.
I'd like to point out that, keep Donna's point in mind. She's talking a few hours. We have to also be careful in reducing employees' pay, that we could put ourselves into close to unemployment compensation. If you reduce too much, then we're going to get, it's going to come out of the other pocket. Same pair of pants, just different pocket. Not that we want to do that. We're also looking at, we did one year where we closed on 1 day a week for 10 or 12 weeks during the summer. And so we're looking at that, but keep in mind that this is, this is a presentation of one possible outcome. You talk about alternative universes. We've given it to the department heads, asked them, what can you do? If you had to live with this money, here's one possibility where we make this cut. Does that work for you? Give you an example. One that's not going to work for us that way is in public safety. The state has a requirement for what they call EMD, emergency medical dispatch. If we were to do that on our own, I'd need 4 more dispatchers. That budget doesn't accommodate 4 more dispatchers. So we're talking to other towns. You may have seen the letter from a selectman in Millbury who suggested that as well. I've talked to the Millbury manager just the other day about consolidating or doing a regional, although I don't like to use that word, a shared approach to this where both towns can at least break even, if not save money. And these are the things we have to do this. We really have to do this to make things work.
And that's, to me, an unfunded mandate, one of many unfunded mandates. But that goes in effect July 1st. That's not a lot of lead time to, primarily, everyone has to double their dispatchers. And none of us have that in the budgets. None of the towns could do that. So it's having to take a step back and say, we really need to do things differently, because we're no longer afforded the luxury of not doing it consolidated with something. I mean, I suggested even today, Sutton had an opening, I said, oh, better look at that one, see if we can combine. And every town is doing the same thing. And it's just to be careful of who you make that selection with, because you want to make sure that you're equal and not going to bail out another town, they'll bring you down.
Right.
That would be my only suggestion. I think that it's inevitable at this point that it's going to happen, and it's going to have to be looked at pretty much on the table for every department.
Any other comments, Selectman Bose?
Hi, Donna. Thank you for being here tonight. I know that the state minimum contribution from the town to the schools is going to be going up by almost $400,000. And at the same time, the $1.6 million, which is going to automatically, I know the board has done that in the past, not the board, but the town has done that in the past, and I'm sure there's good reason for it, but wouldn't this be a year that maybe we could kind of split that up, or maybe the town keep a little bit of that for the town hall operating budget, so maybe we wouldn't have so many people in the town hall affected by, I know these are tough times, and the school needs as much money as they can, but we have other services in town that need to be taken care of. We just mentioned that we're talking about the possible, not bringing one of our police officers back, and consolidating services with the town, and shutting the town hall down on Friday. So, there's a give and take, I think. There should be a give and take. I think when times are tough, I think all departments in town should share the burden equally, and here, I'm just not seeing that, and maybe you can explain to me why it's done this way.
We had, actually, it's been a couple of years now. Originally, actually, it was, one of the members of the board had asked if there was a way to get the town off of, the town side of the government, off of state aid dependency. One of the ways of doing that was to not use the UGGA for the town side, but to almost limit the school side to, that's all you're gonna get one way or the other, up or down. It wasn't until we had the net minimum contribution take a jump that we're like, whoa. However, as the manager said, we're not even sure if that number is going to hold or go down. If it goes down, 100% of that right now is the school's problem. No offense, but they got it all. If they take the cut, they have to take the cut of all of it. I think we can't make a decision on it until we know for sure what those numbers are gonna be. And there's been no deliberation on that to even get a feel, other than for what Senator Moore and some of the other people have said, in their references that those numbers are coming down.
Yeah, it just seems to me, every time we talk about budget crisis, it's always the same departments in town that are getting hit, the town hall, or DPW, or, we have essential town services that, we all need. I understand the school is very important, and, with just the increase in health insurance of $260,000, a large, part of that is the school's
Yep.
share, so, it's just every year, I think we're looking at $26 million that effectively goes to the schools out of a $32 million budget. People don't realize it's that big of a chunk. It's 75% or better. So I think there's a point in time where we may need to pull back a little bit on that. That's just my thought. And other than that, that's all I got.
Selectman Sad?
Yep, thank you. Well, obviously, this is not a fun time for anybody, not only government and government employees, but the general public. Certainly, I think we've done everything in our power over the past several years, since the beginning of this recession, to be very economical on how we have handled our finances in this community. And I know that other towns have looked at us and said, well, how can you do it? And we can't. Well, maybe we do it a little bit better than you do. And I believe that. But I think that we also have to be cognizant of the fact that we're dealing with real human lives here. People depend on a paycheck. And I get kind of put out when I see the suggestion of the cutting of hours. And it's cutting hours of people who work that aren't making much to begin with. The clerical staff, the maintenance staff that work in the town hall. These people have been cut year after year after year. Their pay has gone down and their job duties have increased. And they will continue to increase. We've seen what has happened over this recession by the state dumping on us. And when I say dumping on us, that's exactly what they're doing. We're doing a lot of their work right now. Our civil service, we've dealt with civil service issues because our police department is civil service. We are doing more of their work than they have done in the past. They have said, okay, we don't have the staff. We had to cut back. So you're going to have to do these jobs. And I come into the selectman's office during this whole period of working with the problems we've had in dealing with civil service. I've seen our clerk not only handle those issues, but handle the work that they used to do, that we are now mandated to do. And yet we're turning around and asking her and other people in this town hall who have taken on more responsibilities, and I'm just singling out the selectman's office. I know that the assessor's office and all the other offices are taking more responsibilities on due to the fact that the state is shifting their workload out to the local communities. And I think that's wrong. And we continually get cut year after year after year. My question to you is, if the suggestion is honored by us cutting hours of people, for example, a clerical person gets reduced 2 or 3 hours a week, or what have you. Her paycheck, or his paycheck, is going to be reduced by an hourly rate, is that correct? All right. Now, is this going to be equal across the board? What about department heads? What about salaried people? Are they going to proportionally get a cut, or is it just going to be the little guy that gets whacked again?
Everybody but the town manager, because you have a contract with him right now. So,
Okay.
yes, I'm a department head, and I have a 2.5-hour cut in there as well, and it will be calculated. So actually, in the town hall, I think I have the largest hit.
And rightfully so. I mean, the more you make, the
Right.
bigger the hit. That's understandable. But it's all relative. You know, your pay is relative to you. Her pay or someone else's pay is all relative to based on what they get. You still have to live on it. I would suggest that we use this as a last resort. We cannot cut any more as far as employees are concerned in this community. We just can't do it. You know, there's something to be said for unions, and I'm not a total union person, but in this instance, people who are in the union in this community will not be cut. They will get their pay.
They'll lose a position.
They may lose a position, but that individual that's working will go home with a paycheck without a reduction.
the
And
per-
it could possibly be an increase.
And the person that
Whereas an
loses the
employee,
position gets unemployment.
yes.
Yes. And we deliberately calculate it so town hall employees.
And it
can't-
circles right back to the little guy getting stepped on again. And that's my problem. I don't want to see anybody get hurt, especially people that are just squeaking by on a minimal paycheck. So I would suggest,
Every department dealing with the states throwing, anywhere from filing, having to go into the state system to file for the child support. So every new vendor, I have to go in now and file at the state system, in their system, and flag a new vendor, so that they can collect the child support. Or the forms that you now have to do online, and actually fill them out on the state site, because they don't have, you used to be able to mail them in. Now they don't have anyone to do data entry, so now you've got to do their data entry. And every single department is facing that. It's very frustrating. I know just recently, it was very, in the town clerk's office, the wildlife fishery licenses, which you can actually get online or go through Walmart. But what was happening here is because we're one of the few towns open on Friday, they come here to get it, and we don't even get to keep the whole fee. A percentage, bulk of it goes to the state. So we're not only issuing one of their licenses, collecting their money, then sending it to them.
and there are certain positions that we just cannot cut. I mean, it's a necessity. You can't cut the fire department, the police department, or the EMT. You can't do it. There is a demand, a growing demand for the services of public safety. Okay, as times get bad, their jobs increase. Because police, for example, domestic violence is up. Why? Because people are stressed about not getting enough money to support their families. There are more fires. There are more inspections that have to be made because people are letting go of how they maintain their property in regards to fire safety, et cetera. Ambulance calls have increased. So, I mean, how do we cut these areas? We are down to the bone. So my suggestion is that we look hard, that you and the Finance Committee in particular look very hard at trying to make cuts in areas that don't affect necessary personnel. And I just don't want to see anybody get burnt. We've been taking the hit. We've taken the hit in general government, and I know the school committee's sitting here, and it's tough times for them, but you know what? It's tougher for us, general government. and we still have to provide those public service to the general public. Thank you.
If I could add to Selectman Sad's comment, I think it was this weekend, or maybe last week, a recent, As I See It, article by Chief Bemis on the problem with the collecting of the charges for ambulance services, how the insurance companies are paying the patient rather than the ambulance service directly. The patient takes it, spends it, and says, I'm not paying you. We've got a problem with that, and I don't know how much longer we can maintain supporting our ambulance service the way we've had, because it's everything's squeezing in. Everything is squeezing in on us right now. It's not easy, but the message is heard. Ann?
I guess just in closing, I'm going to wrap it up here. I'm not going to be redundant, but we've got a situation where we have a state and federal government who are both leviathans. They're these entities that have insatiable appetites, and the cities and towns are left holding the bag annually with unfunded mandates. And unlike the state and the federal government, we actually have a balanced budget with real, tangible, projected revenues. The state has intangible, head-in-a-cloud projections like casinos that were, I believe the last fiscal year 2012 budget had revenues based on casinos. There wasn't even legislation in place for casinos. It's still not a shovel in the ground, and yet this year the state is going to have revenue projections based on casinos. And we wonder why our state is unable to send the money back to the cities and towns in lottery aid. What a farce that was. I remember when they passed that. After all expenses, all money was supposed to go back to cities and towns. That is not happening. Selectman Sad, you brought up the issue of the changing of the tax code where we lost, was it $300,000, or I may be misstating the figure?
$71,000.
$71,000, real money that would have come in real handy to keep this building open 5 days a week, because the legislature in their infinite wisdom in 2008 changed the tax code. So guess who could get the money? Not the town of Oxford, but Beacon Hill. And I think that goes to Selectman Lamarche's point about it's going in somebody else's pocket, not the people whose pocket it's supposed to go in, the local government. So a lot of things all around. We're going to do the best that we can with the numbers we have, the real revenue projections, and try to maintain the level of services that we've been able to do. And there are going to have to be some cuts, and we'll make them equitably. We always do. The school department, you come to the table. You know, we're a community of one. We have to get this done and maintain a certain level of public safety for sure, and other level services for the people of town. I guess there are several openings on the Finance Committee. You guys are in the hot spot these days. I want to just recognize you for coming out tonight, and I can't imagine how much time you've put in and the numbers that you've had to crunch, or will have to crunch as we move, Sean's scratching his head, move closer to town meeting. I appreciate the work that you do. It's not an easy thing, and it's going to get tougher. And I think the numbers are going to get worse, quite frankly, because the governor wants to paint a rosy picture, and I think that's what he has done. And I think the legislature is going to come back, and it's not going to be as rosy. There may be some money that is used to fill in the gaps, but I'm not optimistic. So on that note, we'll move on to the next agenda item and talk about charter if we're not thoroughly depressed.
Sorry.
Thank you, but in
Thanks,
all
Donna.
seriousness, thank you for all your work and for coming in
Thank
tonight.
you.
Thank you, Donna.
Thank you, Donna.
Next item on the agenda, we have cable television public ascertainment hearing. I am going to read the public hearing notice into the record. The Board of Selectmen, as statutory issuing authority for the town of Oxford, will conduct a public ascertainment hearing on Tuesday, February 7th, 2012, at 7:15 p.m. in the Selectmen's Meeting Room, second floor, Town Hall, 325 Main Street in Oxford, Mass. The purpose of the hearing will be to review the performance of the current cable television operator Charter Communications Entertainment, LLC, also known as Charter Communications, during its current license term, and to hear testimony on future cable-related needs and interests of the Oxford community. Interested parties are encouraged to attend and offer testimony on any cable-related matters. Any application and reports to be considered at the hearing are available for public inspection at the Oxford Town Hall during regular business hours and for reproduction at a reasonable fee. For more information on the public hearing, please call the Oxford Board of Selectmen's office at 508-987-6027. And Mr. Manager, I know that you have been working on this, and back, just to kind of rewind here, we had talked about scheduling this hearing some time ago, and it has come upon us rather quickly that we are now in the March 2012 segment. I don't know if everybody has a copy of this flow chart here. It kind of sets forth the major events that are to happen with respect to the expiration of the charter license. So, Mr. Manager, at this point, can you just give us a status?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Is there someone here from Charter Communications? I had notified Tom Cohan. Huh? Ma'am?
No.
No? Okay. Basically, what we need to keep in mind, based on my notes, this is a requirement to consider renewal of the license or to hire someone if they're in a situation where they can take over the assets the charter has in town. We need to prepare an RFP. We have to do that through the public hearing process and on the kinds of services and the facilities that the town expects will be provided during the possible renewal term. Therefore, the testimony that you give, it's very important that the testimony you give has to do with cable-related matters. This ascertainment hearing on cable television matters, there are two areas over which the Board of Selectmen has no authority to regulate. The first is the rates that they charge, other than the percentage that we use for the PEG access. We currently have we currently have a factor of 3.5%. It could go as high as 5%, so that would affect the rates. Where's the other item? Oh, what programming is available? They have the basic. Now, we do have, and I think we've expressed at the last hearing, concern about the senior discount. That's something that we can talk about. Chairman Casey had brought up at our last meeting a need for new equipment here. I'd like to put in the record that the town will request that charter fund such for us. I think Mrs. Folio left. The license that's currently in existence has a provision for maintenance of our iNet. That's our intranet, the fibers and cables that link all of the town buildings. They currently maintain that. I would like to put in the record that that's something of interest that we would want to continue. I don't know if there was another thing I wanted to add. Capital, we also need new broadcast equipment, not new as in the sense of replacement, but new for the new location of the school administration building. There was a question about that at our last meeting as to the cost. We have so far two proposals. The school department has two proposals. We had a consultant or a vendor in today looking at this room, and that they range from between $45,000 and $50,000 for equipment for that new space. So I wouldn't be surprised if it was the same thing here. Now, that might be a one-time or a periodic payment that would be made by the cable company. So, if I can, Madam Chairman, I think the logical thing is, since this is a hearing, is to hear from the public.
Sure. And the process is whether you want to just come up and speak, I'd ask that you just identify yourselves for the record. You can submit written documents, you can just give testimony, and what we're doing now is we are in an informational gathering process where we're going to take all the information that is presented to us, and people at home, if you want to stop by, as I said, and submit something in writing, and we're going to put it all together and then use that, the town manager alluded to an RFP. That's a request for proposals, and we would put that out basically in some public publication, looking for people to bid on what we're looking for in our cable provider. That's where we are right now in the process. And I know that there are some people who applied to be on the Cable Advisory Committee. I see Mr. Mattis is here. I think that we had 3 people apply for that. And I think as we move forward, Mr. Manager, is that, have any appointments been made on that? Let me see here. I know that we just got some of these in, so the town manager, you would, I believe, make these appointments to the Cable Advisory Committee. Is that, I believe it's the town manager. It may be this board, or it may be the board in conjunction with the town manager, but I know that some people are here. We probably want to move forward on appointing a committee because they can help us gather information and help us put together an RFP. So,
Good.
having said that, I'm going to just open it up to the public. This is a public hearing. Does anybody want to speak to this issue? Sure, ma'am. You can either sit at the table if you're more comfortable or use the microphone.
I'm not sure how to use the microphone. Caroline Pizzotti, 23 Wheelock Street. I'm very disappointed, very, very disappointed with Charter Cable. But I was listening to the town manager, and he says they have nothing to do with the rates. So I guess I can't bring up the rates, but I will say one thing about it. If you get a senior discount, you cannot have anything but basic cable. If I get a movie channel, the discount is gone. If I get internet, the discount is gone. They have told me this. You cannot reach a live operator unless you're there probably 45 minutes on the phone, and that costs me a lot on my cell phone trying to get through to them, because I'm using a cell phone to reach them. And it's very, very hard to get a live operator. I did get a live operator last Wednesday, and I asked her who gave them permission to speed up my internet in January and February and raise my bill $3 that month, $3 the next month, and go up $10 on my other things, which, and she hung up on me. So there's no communication between Charter Cable and the normal person. They'll ask you questions when they're on a recording, and if they're nothing to do with what you're saying, they say, I don't understand you, I don't understand you. I did get a light operator, and she hung up on me, so that's all I have to say. I think we need to put out a bid for someone else to see if they can give us some better service. Thank you very much.
On the discount, you get the discount on the basic service,
Yes.
but you don't continue that discount if you add anything to it?
Yes, you are correct, sir. Yes.
You do not
You do
continue.
not get the discount,
Okay.
because I have internet and I
Something wrong
have
with
8 channels. So
That's
I do
something
not
wrong.
get the senior discount.
But they-
It's always
Yes.
been that way, Joe.
Has
Thank you
it?
very much.
Thank you, thank you, thank you
Okay.
for your comments.
Through the channel 27, a senior will get a discount. If they opt out to have anything added to it,
Yeah, but if you
it
want
goes away.
HBO, they will take away the discount?
It's $12. I did away with channel.
No, it's just on the basic.
Anybody else want to comment?
But you can still have HBO if you want.
Anybody else want to come up? I mean, I know the senior discount
No,
issue was
right.
an issue Selectman Lamarche brought up at the last meeting when we had somebody, we had a live body from Charter in that seat, and the seat warmed up quite a bit when he was sitting there, because we had a bunch of folks come out and tell him what they thought about Charter and the lack of customer service and accountability. And, you know, we're very frustrated as a board. I have DirecTV, and there just isn't enough competition out there. We'd love to get somebody out here, and we're going to do everything we can to do that, but some of the companies, Vios, Verizon, they're just not investing the infrastructure to move, you know, westerly enough to capture some of our towns. Did you want it? Yes, sir, and then I'll get back to you.
Larry Ackley, 24 Holly Street. With Charter, from what I understand, and this is what I've heard, it's hearsay, but generally, if you hear something that's hearsay, it's generally true. For a while now, Charter's been having financial difficulties, and that's one of the reasons why they had a problem with a lot of their control boxes that you get with your TV. People were losing their channels, they were losing voice, they were losing picture and stuff like that. All they had to do was replace the box, because the box was faulty. But to replace that box, that was money's coming out of their pockets. And if they're already having money difficulties, I mean, they're even in the state of California. State of California, the whole entire state's getting ready to throw them out because of, that service that they don't provide. So, I mean, I went to DirecTV years ago because I just couldn't deal with them anymore. And like she said, Caroline, if you call them up, you're getting a recording, and they're asking you this and that, and if you say more than a yes or a no, what do you get for a response? I don't understand what you're saying, please repeat it. You know, and then you do not talk to a human being, you don't. And then, like she said, if you ever do get one, they're gonna make you hang up on them. because
During
they're not
renewal
gonna do
time.
it when you-
During renewal time, you get
But
to talk to a human being.
if you drive, you live in Oxford on Main Street, I live in Oxford, you drive through the town of Oxford, and what do you see on everybody's roofs? Satellite dishes. But these people here at 23 Wheelock, they can't have
Right,
satellite.
right.
People down on Liberty Lane, they can't have satellite. They are restricted to have Charter. And I don't think, now this is my own opinion, I don't think that's fair. I honestly don't think it's fair. Because you can get DirecTV for $19.99 a month and have 250 channels. You know, it ain't fair.
That's a good,
Okay.
that's a good point about the restrictive covenants that they travel with the title to the condo or the
Yeah,
senior center
that's
and,
been going on for years, ever
That's
since,
something
from the very beginning. These people are restricted to Charter. They have no option.
thank you. Anybody else? Yes, sir.
I think everybody can hear me right from here. My walking isn't the best.
Okay,
We have Charter, and I'll tell you, my wife just told me, we're paying $69 a month. I'm telling you, just one thing. If I could get you people on that dish, I would change within 5 minutes. Maybe you people could fix it up so that we could get with Direct, and then you know what we could tell Charter, where they could do with their thing.
thank you,
Okay.
thank you.
I thank you.
I think we'd be one of the first Board of Selectmen on DirecTV, put us on the map.
Jenny, I'm taking your place.
But that's a very good point.
I don't think you get too much money for that, though, would you?
Yeah, right.
You'd have to pay
Hey, is there
people.
anybody else? And if not, I mean, back to the town manager, to the committee, appointing the committee, and I would ask the board at this point, I'd make a motion that we send a letter to our elected representatives and senator, asking them, and to our congressman, Neil, and to Senator Brown and Senator Kerry, inquiring, and I'd be happy to work in conjunction with the clerk to draft it, getting an answer to why these restrictive covenants travel with, because there's federal funding involved too, as well as state, why these restrictive covenants prevent satellite dishes, and what, if anything, would they be willing to do as far as lifting that restriction? I'm sure there was a reason for it at some time, and just with the technology, I mean, you wouldn't need a dish on, I'm sure that there's a way that people could come up with a way to allow people to have that option of DirecTV. Maybe Charter just had a monopoly on our elected officials. I mean, that happens. They have lobbyists. They spend a lot of money. I mean, we know how the game works, right? So there's a reason why they have a monopoly, and I'd like to just write a letter and get it out there to our state and federal officials and say, hey, this is a problem in our community. Can you help us get around this and maybe give these folks an option with a dish?
I'll second that.
One seconded. Selectman Bose.
Just discussion, Jen. I was explained once that, I was told once, rather, that it had more to do with the charter going into that condominium or housing project and having exclusive rights with that. I was thought didn't have anything to do with the federal government. I thought it was just a deal where, okay, we'll give you guys cable, but everyone has to be on cable in this building. Does it have anything to do with the federal or state government? Do we know for sure?
Well, because of the funding to these housing authorities, and because of the disabled folks and the elderly who are in there, I think it does. I'm pretty sure it does under the Federal Housing Act and under the state acts, and it relates to the land, and these entities are on municipal, state, or federal land. I mean, most of these are not privately owned.
Right,
Some of them are, so that's why I'm saying, I mean, if you're the landowner and you're saying, look, every deed that passes at Liberty Lane, it's gonna have this restrictive covenant. I'll use an analogy, you can't have garden gnomes, and that travels with every title down, could travel for 200 years down the line of title, or whoever's moving in there, and we deal with the federal and the state government with respect to these housing units. So I'm quite certain the extent of the federal and state involvement would be something we'd have to find out, but I'm quite certain under the Federal Communications Administration and the funding mechanisms for these types of housing arrangements, yeah, it's state, federal, and we have a role to play as a municipality as well. That's my understanding without getting into specifics, because I don't want to speak to them.
You know more than I do, that's for sure.
Well, I don't know, but I know that, that they're involved in this. So, moved and seconded. Mr. Mattis?
Madam Chairman, on behalf of Condominium Association, I have a condo at Thayer Pond. Charter was in, when I was the trustees up there. They offered us $22,000 for an exclusive contract. So they have gone out to condominium associations, and they are offering sums of money. The larger the condominium association, the greater the dollars. They offered us $24,000 for a 10-year exclusive contract, unrestricted funds. You have to use charter. Some people have gotten dishes. They put them on their deeded property, but there is a full court press on by charter going into associations, offering sums of money for exclusive contracts.
Thank you for
Check
that.
with the Housing
Thank you.
Authority, too.
Selectman Sad?
Yeah, before Bob leaves, I know you've served on the Housing Authority for quite some time. Are you aware of what the deal is with charter as far as having exclusive rights down there at the housing?
The charter, as far as the cable, it's a contract cable, they came in and they wanted the exclusive back in last year, but the state sent out a directive not to enter into a exclusive contract with charter for housing authorities. I tell you the truth, John, no one down there has a dish. I mean, there are many people that would like to have a dish or other sort, but there are some covenants on there put out by the state. Maybe something you could check with Elizabeth to get an update. It may have changed in the last couple of years. I'm not sure, John.
Because I know I have gotten calls in the past from people that asked about, having a dish put up. And I was told back then, this is a number of years ago, that when cable came in, the state authorized them to wire the entire complex. So every apartment has been wired for charter cable.
Yeah, originally it started off, before charter came into Oxford, they had large antennas down there.
Right.
But it was wired with the anticipation that there would be a cable company coming into Oxford.
Right.
They are wired for cable.
And they have the exclusive
Right.
on all the wiring that goes into each one of those apartments. So how could someone else come in when they have the exclusive right? So you're right, there might be some kind of a covenant there protecting them as far as being the exclusive contractor in that particular.
If the town makes a change, there's going to have to be some sort of arrangement between the new contract provider and charter for the transfer of titles and liability of all the property. There's quite a bit. Charter is very possessive. They don't want to give it up. They just don't want to give up contracts.
And if I could continue,
Sad?
Madam Chair? This gets very, very frustrating because we're going to have charter in here and we're going to go through the motions, and it's going to be very limited on what we can do as a community. And as far as getting a competitive bid, forget that. I mean, when they came in and they wired the entire town, okay, they have control of all that wiring. So they've got the exclusive. So they made it almost impossible for someone else to come in and bid on a contract for the town of Oxford, because that would mean that they would have to wire the entire town. They couldn't use the cable, the Charter wires, unless Charter sold them the rights to own those, that wiring. And Selectman Gallant and I went to a couple of meetings in Shrewsbury,
I was there.
and they have their own. And that was the time to get involved, when cable first came out. And Shrewsbury was smart enough to jump on it right in the beginning. So they pretty much run that, and they run it very, very well, which goes to show you, the smaller you are, sometimes the better off you are. And once a large company like Charter comes in, they scare out all the competition. Nobody's going to come in and bid on a contract for the town of Oxford. It just ain't going to happen.
I do have a motion on the floor, and I just, in the age of wireless, we are becoming more and more of a wireless world. I mean, many households are wireless. You can pop your laptop on down in your kitchen and get right on the internet. So as far as these wires, we can only hope that they become obsolete someday. And so I think, I still want to send that letter and see what we can do. And, maybe there's some way that we reach out to a dish company with our RFP. We try to make it a little bit more appealing to them with all of these concerns in the forefront of our mind, and do what we can. We're not afraid to take on the big guy, for example, Aquarion. Yes, sir.
I got another question. As far as the wiring goes, National Grid puts power through the town of Oxford, through the power lines. Now, I just changed my power from National Grid to another company. My power is still coming in on National Grid's lines. So, how can they do that? How can this other company put power through National Grid's power lines to my home? If something happens with my lines in my home, National Grid is the ones who has the trees trimmed. They're also the ones who replaces the wire, even though I pay another company for my electricity, because they sell the electricity to me cheaper than what National Grid can. Now, as John was saying, with the Charter, I still have Charter's cables in my house. They're all along the front of my house. They're coming into the rooms. I had 3 TVs. They're still there. I have a dish on my garage now, and I have a dish on my house, 2 dishes. Now, DirecTV took and put in new lines, but I also have Charter lines, which I no longer use, but they're still there. But, I mean, National Grid is allowing other companies to send power down their lines. National Grid is coming up with like a 30% increase on the power. I changed over 2 years ago to another company, and I pay less now per kilowatt than I was doing with National Grid. And now National Grid's going up 30%. I'm going to be paying a whole lot more less than they were before.
You.
So, maybe it's something that we could check into.
We will.
Hopefully at Wheelock and Liberty Lanes. If the cables are in there, okay, they're there. What's to say they can't put a dish on a roof? You've got four apartments per unit. Put 1 dish on the roof and run it to 4 apartments. All you got to do is come off the roof and go into the apartment.
We're going to look into it.
Thank you, Larry.
Thank you. Call for the vote.
Yes.
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 Yes, 4 in the affirmative, 1 absent, motion carries. If there aren't any further comments on this, I'm going to entertain a motion to close the public ascertainment hearing.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Being none, I'll call for the vote.
Yes.
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 Yes, 4 in the affirmative, the public hearing is closed, but we are still accepting comments, both written and oral, towards Selectman's office. Next item on the agenda is the animal shelter discussion. It was a request to be put on the agenda by Norma Jean Hanks. I know that Ms. Hanks is present. Would you like to come forward? And I'll yield the floor to you. Good evening.
Good evening.
Norma Jean Hanks, 1 Dudley Road. I'd like to know if I could request an article will be put on the warrant for the May meeting and let the community decide on the regionalization for the animal control. Did I say it right?
Yeah, you did. I don't know if it's an issue. What would the, I'm just,
I know it was talked about.
yeah, I don't think there's been any decision on it. So what you're requesting is that we put an article on the town meeting warrant to let the community decide as to whether or not Oxford is gonna regionalize its animal control department. You have, we do that? I'm not saying, I'm just trying to think of how we would do that.
Didn't we do that before you started the shelter, so it would be almost 2 years ago? There was an article on the warrant to authorize regionalization with Webster and Dudley, and/or Dudley.
Okay.
I think that was on the warrant. I don't remember what the result of the vote was.
Well, I would entertain a motion then, given the request, to preserve a spot on the May town meeting warrant for an article, and I don't know what the legal language would be at this point. I get what you're saying, I understand what the request is, to reserve a spot for this request of an article. I don't know how, I guess it would be, I just entertain a motion, and we reserve a spot at this point.
So moved.
Second for discussion.
Moved and seconded for discussion. Selectman Sad.
Yeah. What are you trying to accomplish by the article? I think I have to understand what the article is being put on for.
So as to not regionalize our
Okay,
facility.
so this is not to regionalize.
Correct.
Yes.
Regionalize what?
Our facility, the new facility.
Of the-
And
Okay.
I can see this already coming, the ACO's position as well. See, we have a bunch of issues here. We've got about 15 or 20 questions to present to the board. Problem is, we have run into a roadblock, not the least of is the town manager, not allowing us access to the ACO's emails and things like that. So we had to fill out a Freedom of Information Act to get this information. So we got a bunch of questions that we can't properly ask because we don't have all the information needed. I would ask that, on top of this issue, that
But can we just deal with this one first?
Sure.
Because I have a motion on the floor, just procedurally. I don't want to get
I
all mixed up
understand.
here.
But there are a couple of ways to put an article on the town meeting floor.
correct.
I mean, the selectmen can sponsor an article, or there can be a petitioned article, where you would need the required number of signatures to put the article on, okay? Now, the board can put an article on, but the board has to be comfortable with the wording, and we have to understand what the purpose of the article is before we as individual selectmen can support it. And that's why I'm asking these questions. I want to know what the reasons behind this is before I endorse an article for placement on the town meeting warrant.
Understood. I guess basically what we don't want is the new facility that basically donations paid the vast majority of, to be supporting other towns' animals, and our ACO's position to be outsourced to an ACO from another town. We would like to keep our own ACO, and we'd like to keep our animals in our shelter, and not necessarily, except by per diem, have other towns' animals in our shelter.
Okay, so you would be opposed to the town accepting a fee from a neighboring town?
No, I wouldn't be opposed to it being for a fee, but as an overall regionalization, I would be opposed to it, yes. But if we were to accept animals for Webster on a per diem basis or something for, which we've done before, they had issues over there and we had their animals here for a while. I have no problem with that. What I do have a problem with is picking ex-ACO from, Rutland and having them run our facility and running their animals or any other region's animals in and out of our facility.
You know, I don't think that that's an issue. At least it's not an issue with me, and I think I've said this at other meetings.
No, you have.
I think that
And so hasn't Selectman Lamache.
we should have our own animal control officer.
So as
But
stated
as
in-
far as can I finish?
Sure.
As far as regionalization is concerned, I think it's a matter of defining what you mean by regionalization. Now, I am in favor of regionalizing as far as allowing other communities within our immediate area to allow them to have animals brought to our facility for a fee,
Yes, I agree with
so that those fees can help pay for the animal shelter. But as far as having a contract with a separate entity from outside of town to run the animal control department, I'm opposed to that.
Yes.
And basically, as I understand it through the newspaper stuff, that is kind of what town manager is looking at doing, correct?
I haven't decided anything.
Therefore, I'd like to preempt that by asking that this be taken to a vote to the people. The people paid for the vast majority of that building, put in the time and effort to build that building, and I think they deserve the say in how it's used as well.
Well, and I agree with that. I totally agree with that. But Oxford, my feeling is, and I'll go to town meeting and I'll argue it, my feeling is the town of Oxford put sweat and tears into building that thing, invested nearly $500,000 into that place. And to just contract it out to somebody outside of the community to run it
completely agree.
is absolutely something that I would not support. And I can't speak for any other member of the Board of Selectmen, but I can't support it. That facility was built by Oxford hands, and it should remain in Oxford
Particularly
hands.
to like a
And the
completely
control should be in Oxford
unvetted
hands.
institution for profit like Bartonbrook. I've done a humongous amount of research. The board or the town manager should have done the same research. Really ugly facility, very ugly. And to think that this could have become how we do business with our animals really bothers me, because we did do a lot of work, we did raise a lot of funds. Animals and our townspeople deserve better, and when the final use of this facility comes to fruition, I do believe that the townspeople have the right to put their 2 cents worth in and vote on how it gets used, and that's what I ask.
I can understand where you're coming from,
Thank you.
and you know where I'm coming from
I
on
most
this.
certainly do.
Okay, and I'll fight it tooth and nail. And I've seen guys like Mr. Lamache put all that time and effort into it, and people like yourselves that are on that committee, you don't deserve anything other than to be listened to.
Thank you.
Selectman Lamache had his hand up, then I'm going to go to Selectman Bose.
The motion is only to reserve a spot.
Correct.
We are not sponsoring this by any means until we see how it's written and what it states. So that's the intent of my motion, is just to reserve a spot, so you people have the option to have that on the warrant. And, of course, you know my position,
I know your
so-
position, yes.
And I think
Thank
that was the point I was going to make, but Selectman Bose?
I'd just first like to thank, all the volunteers, including yourself. I think, it's an unbelievable thing what all the volunteers did down, all the fundraising, the labor that went into it. I know we have a lot of animal lovers in town, and I myself am an animal lover, and I think that it's very important that, we take the best care of our animals. I'm not a dollars and cents guys when it comes to, destroying animals. personally, I want to do everything that we can possibly do before we put an animal down, obviously unless it's ill and it just cannot be saved. So I applaud your efforts. I'm not for really regionalizing the system either. I think that, I think it would be okay to, bring animals in from other towns, especially if it's going to, give that animal better care. There's some towns that just don't have the facilities to care for the animals properly. We have a really nice facility. It's certainly plenty big enough to handle more animals than we have in Oxford. So I would not have a problem doing that for a fee either. One question as far as the ACO position goes, I'm kind of confused on that because I'm not sure that we can actually bring that to town meeting to, it'd have to be a charter change or something, because by charter, I think the town manager has exclusive rights to hiring.
Correct.
So I think you're gonna, to do it the way you want to do it, you're probably gonna have to segment it and go for a charter change.
I've already become aware of that
Yeah.
after thoroughly reading the charter. But
Yeah, so.
we do have a lot of questions before it ever got to that point.
Right.
But we're lacking a bunch of information. And as a result, we had to file a Freedom of Information Act to obtain this information.
Oh, that's all right.
And so what I was going to ask, and I understand that you guys looking at reserving a spot on the warrant for this, but I guess what I'm saying is we'd like the townspeople to be able to vote on it. When it comes to the actual personnel issue, the actual individual who will become the ACO and all that, we have questions about it, but I'd like to reserve another time, a month or so down the road, when we've finally gotten all this information back from our request for the Freedom of Information Act, so that we can ask questions properly and have all the information we need to do this. But at the moment, we've had to file one to obtain some records here in town and in a few other places.
Well, you do understand, sir, just to be fair to the town, we've kind of given you great latitude here and not said anything. There's a personnel issue involved here, which the town is prohibited from releasing certain information legally. It may not include all the emails that you've requested, but there is a fine line and personnel. Let me finish, please. Just everybody's going to get a chance to talk, I promise, even if we're here till midnight. Hopefully we're not. But personnel records are very, very sensitive records, and there's a lot of legal implications with respect to personnel records. I'm not saying the emails you've requested fall under that category, but that is something that is going on, and that is a reality of this situation. Secondly, there is litigation pending right now involving this community that's been filed from a business here in town. They're represented by a law firm here in town, which also has ramifications for what may or may not be released. So to be fair to the town, you have to recognize those two big entities, and those factors are in play here. So to just come up here and say we're holding back records and you had to file a Freedom of Information Act request, you may have done that, but please respect and appreciate the sensitive nature of the records and the fact that there is litigation pending and there are personnel issues out there that are yet to be resolved. So I just want to go on the record and say that.
So I'm perfectly aware of them.
Okay. There is a motion on the floor. We're going to save your spot on the warrant. I just want to say again, this is to save you a spot. We do this, even if some of us don't support the article. I'm not saying whether, that you're going to get a majority or not. We'll work out the legalese, but we're going to preserve a spot for you. You've asked us to do that. I'm going to call for the vote. Just the generic sense that what the article will say, as far as the community not regionalizing our animal control services. Call for the vote. Facility.
Right.
Call for the vote.
Yes.
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 Yes, 4 in the affirmative, 1 absent, and we will preserve that spot on the warrant.
When a vote finally does come, back with the Aquarian vote, for instance, it was a very, very close yea and nay vote. Town manager, as is his right, asked for a stand-up vote.
You mean the moderator?
The moderator did, correct. I have an issue. I was sitting in an area where everybody voted nay and refused to stand up and be recognized because they were town employees and whatnot. I'd like to find out how to set a motion, how to set an article onto the warrant, so that anytime we have a nay and yea vote that's close and needs to be physically counted, that it can be done by ballot. because that vote was corrupted, because people were afraid to stand up and vote. And it's not the first time it's happened.
That's right.
So how do we go about changing it so that on a yea and nay vote that's just really too close to pinpoint, and we need clarification by count, that it can be done without a stand-up vote? Because
It's not a change. It's a simple matter of town meeting deciding, voting to have a secret ballot. A motion's made, the moderator recognizes the motion, and it's put to a vote.
Okay.
There's nothing that has to be changed. It's a simple matter of the people at town meeting all agreeing they want a secret ballot. That's how you get it done.
So on an individual
On an individual
basis
article.
per warrant on the item, it can be
Individual
done.
article, correct.
Yeah, you could stand up
Okay,
and say,
no,
make a
'cause
motion for a
as a
secret
veteran,
ballot.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, it's okay, you just stand up, make a motion, Ms. Hanks could second it, request a secret ballot. I mean, and the thing about the Aquarian vote is nobody did that, for starters, and
Yeah.
to be fair to the town, again, nobody challenged it. Aquarian spent millions of dollars in attorney's fees, and they didn't challenge the vote. So to suggest it
completely
was
understand.
corrupt, they didn't think so, but anyway.
I saw an awful lot of people who wouldn't stand up, and I can understand, you know, they got livelihoods that they needed to protect, and I fully understand it, but, you know, as a veteran, when I see a vote not go the way people want it to because they're afraid to vote their conscience because they have to stand up, that violates everything that I ever was in the service for. You know, the most
That's why
important thing is the vote.
sometimes you gotta have that resolve, and you gotta stand up and
Well, I didn't realize how it
you
was
gotta do
done.
what you gotta do. You know, sometimes it's tough to do, believe me. I do it every Wednesday in Boston, and I'm usually outnumbered 25-1, and it's tough to do, and you don't always make friends, but sometimes you gotta do what you gotta do. So, but I hear what you're saying. It's a simple motion, as the town manager said, and it's happened before. I think it was a
We've done that
school
before.
vote. Was that the last time? Was it a school vote? No.
You know, I'm kind of reluctant to come out on this because for some reason, I think that this has come up before, and it all boils down to the decision of the moderator. And I think the moderator is the one that decides whether or not
It's not a vote?
it's a blind vote or an open vote. So I don't think it's a vote of the town meeting.
No?
No, I think it's the moderator's decision.
We spoke to him, and I believe he's right.
Okay, so it's up to him.
So it might have been Frank Morgan the last time that we did
Yeah.
that. It was a school vote issue.
Yeah, it's the moderator's decision. I think so.
I thought it was,
Because this has come up years ago, it happened, and it boiled down to the moderator's decision.
but I think the moderator can call for a vote. And I think that's
Oh, he
my
can.
record. Like, he
He
can call
can.
for a vote as to whether or not
He
people
has
want
the
a
ultimate
secret
say.
ballot.
He or she has the ultimate say on votes and parliamentary procedure at the town meeting. It's powerful when it comes to those kinds of
It
issues.
most certainly is.
Mm.
You're absolutely right.
Okay, what else you got?
I wanted to know, went on the website for Oxford and went on to adopt animals, and the Barton Brook kennel comes up on that. Is that like free advertisement for her?
I don't know.
Now, that's where our animals are until the shelter is open.
Because there is a cease and desist order for her to not
Careful,
adopt out animals.
be careful.
I do.
No, I'm just some
do out of my
friendly
eyes and
advice. Just be
cross my
careful what you say,
Um,
all right?
What I would be, let's see, the last item. I would like to, there are a few issues when it comes to animal control, like I said, that I have not gotten all my information back on, and they were able to ask questions properly. So I'd ask that maybe in 1 month's time, if we may have a few minutes to ask these questions once I've received all my information back from the Freedom of Information Act.
Sure, and again, as long as, just be sensitive. You certainly can have the agenda time. I'll work it out with my clerk. I have a very liberal policy with respect to the agenda. Just ask that we get sufficient notice, and we're happy to have you back in. And you can ask your questions.
Very good, thank you. Appreciate your time.
Welcome, thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, I'm going to entertain a motion with respect to the next agenda item the continued public hearing for selecting the residential tax factor. We don't have the information that we need yet, so rather than open the public hearing and then continue it, I'm just going to entertain a motion that we postpone the public hearing on setting the residential tax factor. Madam Clerk, what do we?
February 28th.
February 20.
We have an item, the first item is policy 501. So I don't know if you'd like to address the tax factor first and then go into the rest of 501. That's the board's policy.
Madam Chair,
Selectman Sad?
I would assume you want a full board for that?
Yes.
I won't be here on the 28th, I'm sorry. Matter of fact, 28th, I know for sure I'm not going to be here, so I don't know if you want to change that to a,
No, I want to leave it.
you want to leave it, it's fine.
I'm
All
only
right,
kidding.
I'm just putting it out
I
there.
know, if you want to be here, if it's not an issue for you, I mean, whatever you want to do, I'll accommodate your schedule. I know that
Well, I think since it involves
a selectman's policy.
selectmen's policy, probably should be here.
Okay, what else do we have?
Well, for what, the tax factor or the?
No, the
the
policy.
other
Policy. Oh, are you okay with the tax factor on the 28th?
I'm fine
Yes,
with,
yes, the tax factor is not, I'm talking about selectmen's policy issue.
yes, okay.
Okay? The next two meetings, I will not be here. So anything after that is fine.
The next two meetings, we got the 20s. That would be the 13th, you're not gonna be here the 13th either?
So it'll be the following meeting.
And you're gone. We're just
Yeah,
going to
I'm on-
postpone that indefinitely,
It
Madam
doesn't
Clerk.
really matter, I mean, you can do it in April then,
can
because
do
it
it in
doesn't,
April.
it doesn't really matter.
I mean, there's no
There's no urgency.
I mean, there's no rush.
No,
We
it's
have to
not.
get this thing done
No,
right
it's
away.
not, so I'm fine.
About April 1st.
I like that.
That's a
April
Sunday.
Fools.
Right, well, the tax factor then.
The 28th is the tax factor.
28th.
Correct. And then we'll reschedule bump us out to, when's everybody going to be back? Late March, early April?
April 10,
I'm gone.
April 24.
That's fine with me.
Fine with me?
7 PM on April 24.
Great. Thank you. Mr. Manager?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I have a brief report tonight.
Thank
First-
you, Mr. Manager. Selectman
You're
Lamarche.
I have to say it first. We-
Will you call for the vote and postpone of the hearing?
Sure.
Tax hearing,
Call for
yeah.
the vote?
Yes.
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 Yes, for in the affirmative, we will postpone the tax factor hearing to February 28th at 7 PM.
That's right, very good. We need to keep a written record of that. Three items. First, the meeting minutes. Request the board vote to approve the meeting minutes of December 20th, 2011. Selectman Lamountain and Selectman Vos were both absent. Pleasure of the board.
I would entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second?
Moved and seconded discussion. Being none, I'll call for the vote.
Yes.
Abstain.
Yes.
Yes.
We have an additional school committee vacancy. We heard last week, or last meeting from Chairman Ennis that two members of the school committee will not be seeking reelection. We have a request that the board vote to place on the annual town election ballot of May 15th, 2012, the upcoming open seat on the school committee based on the resignation of Mr. Stephen Anderson from the school committee, which will take effect on Election Day, which is May 15th, 2012. So to restate that, he has given his resignation effective May 15th, 2012. The seat to be filled will be for 2 years, that is until 2014, which will be the remaining years of Mr. Anderson's term. Pleasure of the board.
Entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second?
Seconded discussion. Call for the vote.
Yes.
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 Yes, for in the affirmative.
Very good. And finally, request for injured on duty. We've received a request from Police Chief Michael Hassett for an injured on duty claim for a police officer injured while on duty on February 2, 2012. I've reviewed the information reviewed the information provided to me and find the request to be in compliance with your injured on duty policy. Pleasure of the board.
I would entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second?
Moved and seconded discussion. Being none, I'll call for the vote.
Yes.
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 Yes, 4 in the affirmative.
That ends my report for February 7th.
Thank you. Selectman Lamarche.
Well, I would like to start by thanking Amy Hamill. She was a volunteer on the Animal Shelter Committee. She helped us quite a bit in raising funds and doing a lot of work. She's also part of the 501c3 committee now, so that's why she's resigned. And I just wanted to personally thank her for all the work she did. And while I'm talking about the animal shelter, I can sit here and state that we are 100% complete. We have all inspections. All I am waiting for is for the building inspector to sign off for an occupancy permit, which I'm hoping will happen this week, and then we will be able to use our facility. And that's all I have.
Wow, congratulations. Will there be a grand opening, a ribbon cutting, or?
Eventually, not right at the moment. We have a few things we want to get in order first, so.
For that? Thank you. Selectman Bose.
I don't have anything.
Thank you. Selectman Sad.
Yeah. I got a call the other day from someone that rode by the old Knights of Columbus building. It's now a daycare. There are some containers for clothing. There is boxes, clothes, furnishings spread out all over the corner of that lot. This is becoming a problem. I mean, we had the problem on Route 20, and now you're starting to see it in other areas in town. I don't know, do we send a letter to the property owner asking them to get that cleaned up? Because I would assume it would be their responsibility since it's their property. So it would be incumbent upon them to contact the owners of those containers and get that cleaned up. It's a definite eyesore, and if you haven't ridden by there, please take a look at it. It's a mess.
The Board of Health will send a letter, and thank you for bringing it up. We had a complaint from a resident of Chestnut Hill? Is
Yep.
that who called about that, and the Board of Health went right out and took care of it. So
Okay.
unfortunately, I wish the property owners would do that, but we'll get on top of it.
Yeah, it's unfortunate that, it kind of gives a black eye to those organizations that look forward to raising the funds to support their good efforts. That's all I have.
Thank you. I just have one item, and it's a request that we received from Joel Doust, who is a veteran. It was a request that we reserve a spot on the annual town meeting warrant for an article, and I believe all my colleagues have this, with respect to local tax benefits for veterans and active service members under Chapter 3.0, the motor vehicle excise tax. And it's a pretty lengthy packet that Mr. Douse submitted to us, but I would like to preserve a spot on the warrant so we can consider instituting this policy especially for our active duty service men and women who are away serving. This is a little something that we can do as a community to support them. And I haven't read through the packet in its entirety, but this, again, would just be to reserve a spot on the town meeting warrant. And I want to thank Mr. Dowse for taking the time to send the board this packet. I think more communities should be doing this for our veterans. And so I would entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Call for the vote.
Yes.
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 Yes, 4 in the affirmative. Thank you for your support on that. That's all I have. So I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Call for the vote.
Yes.
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 Yes, 4 in the affirmative.